Welcome back to Jeopardy Live Panel. This is Andy Saunders. I'm here right now with Jason Keller and Pranjal Vachaspati for two-thirds of our live roundtable discussion in this segment of Jeopardy Live Panel. Welcome back, Jason. Also, I hear you did well at Scrabble this weekend. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Winning the tournament in Stamford, Connecticut.
Yes.
Isn't that where the crossword puzzle tournament is held?
In fact, held in the exact same hotel as the crossword tournament. I even brought my crossword tournament name tag from this year, and I think that it gave me a little bit of good luck.
It sounds like it must have. Congratulations on that. And also, another recent big winner, Pranjal Vachaspati. 4 wins, $89,188 so far. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty surreal, and thanks for having me on the show.
And if you have any questions for this part of the panel, you can leave them on the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, and I will ask them. I guess we've got one on the panel already from Logan M. Yeah, it's a good spot to start. I think we noticed this. I noticed this anyway. I noticed you spent a lot of time giving incorrect answers.
Yeah.
Was the Wednesday show, July 20th, I guess without any potential spoilers going forward, was that game sort of an oh bleep moment from which you learned not to guess so rampantly?
Yeah, I think that definitely happened. I think hopefully I've got my act together now. I think in the last game I only had 2 wrong answers, and honestly I don't remember how many I have in any upcoming games that may happen. So well, I guess we'll all have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I've noticed, it sounds like you were a calculation error from having 4 runaways in 4 games?
Yep, that's right. I should have bet a little more in that first game, but so there was that actually a big break when they were going over that answer, Catholics or Quakers. Maggie said they were on the phone with the Pope. So that I had my wager locked in, and right at the end they're like, oh hey, you have $4,000 more. And this being my first game, I hadn't realized instead of getting $2,000 more, I'd get $4,000 back. So then I forgot to carry a number or something while adding.
Well, I mean, it certainly worked out for you anyway. Now, what was going through your head when you saw the first Final Jeopardy clue? And you're sitting there. You obviously at the point where you don't have the runaway yet, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I was like, well, I'm standing next to a law clerk, so I better get this right. And I know it's either John Marshall or John Jay, and it's John Marshall. And I totally forgot that Thurgood Marshall existed, and I hadn't even thought about that until lots of people on the internet reminded me that he existed earlier this week. So I promise I was really thinking about John Marshall, anonymous Twitter commenters.
There were, That's one thing about social media these days, especially, that they are not afraid to hunt you down. Speaking of which, the haters are starting to make themselves be more known, as always happens with a long-running contestant. I think, Jason, I'm not sure how they were with you, but
honestly, you know what? I just really, and you know what? I kind of also, have this nostalgia for how I perceived things when I was growing up, and my goal of being on the show was just to try to be as much like one of those contestants. And you notice that actually, I mean, since then, we haven't had too many champions who have gone as long as I have, who've kind of gone in that mold. But quite honestly, I also was just like, I didn't, I wasn't. Also, I don't think it was or at least it just wasn't on my radar nearly as much. I was just thinking, I was part of social media, but I didn't really interact. And honestly, you know what? I was just like, I mean, I saw a little bit of some of the silly comments on the Jeopardy page after I lost, but like, I just didn't. I was just like, you know what, I did this. I did what I did. I went in with no expectations. I played the games the way that I wanted to play them, and couldn't, at least for the regular season, couldn't be really any happier with how things went.
Mm-hmm. I find it fascinating. Maggie actually told you that they were on the phone with the Pope, Pranjal?
Well, I mean, jokingly,
Oh, okay.
It sounds like a very. When you said that, I was like, that sounds like Maggie's, kind of pulling your chain a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, okay.
But the point is, it took them quite a while to kind of get in touch with the right people and figure out, how bad the Catholics really had it in Puritan, Massachusetts.
Well, that's fair, and I think that, I took it somewhat seriously in only the respect that in the old Jeopardy book, they mentioned a situation back in the 80s where there was an issue with a law question, and they actually had to phone the U.S. One of the U.S. courts in Honolulu.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was the only one that was still within business hours at the time of taping. And they're like, "We're calling from Jeopardy. We have this issue," and
please resolve it.
Yeah, that it got resolved, but so I mean,
the real judge, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for sure, Jeopardy will go to absolutely every length it deems necessary to make sure that the contestants are treated fairly. In that, and to be honest with you, I would believe it if they said, yes, we're calling the Pope or we're calling the Vatican to make to be certain of this. So. I got Jason's take on the haters. How have you felt about the various comments on social media? I saw one person mention that they were thankful for 2016 because they got a chance to quote. I believe the quote was "thirst follow you," but
That's right. Yeah. So there's a good amount of feedback, positive and negative, and I think it's hilarious. I think it's great. I'm having a blast. You know, I think it's really easy to see people who get on TV and point out their weird mannerisms, because really we all have weird mannerisms, and they kind of are accentuated whenever we're in a position like being on TV. So I think that kind of thing is perfectly normal, and I again think it's hilarious.
So, by the way, we do have a third member of our panel who will be joining us shortly. Gordon Reid will be coming onto the panel very shortly. He's just running behind and has not joined us yet. Once he does, we'll get into a bit more of a discussion about your thoughts on A, sports categories, and B, the clickbait shaming articles that happen to pop up at the same time as sports categories when contestants don't happen to know the correct responses. So if you have any thoughts on that yourself, do leave those notes on the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel on Twitter, and I will be passing those along and reading those out along with the panel. But back to Pranjal and Jason here while we're waiting for Gordon. From what I've seen, you've only really missed one daily double so far, Pranjal. Have you had you thought about maybe, I guess is that 70 or 80% range, 80 to 90% range on daily double something you had thought about going in, or is that something that's just happened so far?
No, that's roughly, I think, around what I expected, at least. And I think I've gotten a little lucky so far with daily double showing up in categories that I'm familiar with and that I studied for. But yeah, I do think that my normal get rate on questions is somewhere in that range. If I go through a board on JArchive, I'll get 50 out of 60 or something. So.
Okay. So with that in mind, I'm surprised you haven't chosen to bet more aggressively, but
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little, I think, conservative, but I think also I've been less conservative than Jeopardy contestants usually are, which was kind of my goal going in. Um, except, of course, with the final Jeopardy when, I'm betting based on just the numbers.
well, exactly, and
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty conservative on my on not my finals, excuse me, on my daily doubles when I hit them, because you don't know, number one, even if it's in a category you don't know what's under there, but also I was playing with the strategy that I didn't want to press myself too much, and I also didn't want to, which I think is something that it's funny because in this era where there are more people who go aggressively on daily doubles. And there were there was at least one infamous example this season, but I think that sometimes if you go aggressively, you're in a position where you're in really good shape for the game. I'm not, I would just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a conservative wager. I'm going to make sure that I'm still comfortably leading. And you know what? Opponents come and get me. It's definitely a different tactic from, but I think because as I said, I think there was an example earlier this season where someone bet aggressively and could have just been conservatively and maintained a lead, and I think that it might have allowed that contestant's opponents to think, well, now I've got a chance of winning the game because he missed this aggressive daily double.
And I think there is a real trade-off when you look at, average daily scores and lengths of the run where they're somewhat inversely related. The 9-day champ this season had a fairly low average score because he was being conservative, and that let him kind of keep going. Whereas, some of the people with really high average daily scores, it's a little swingier.
Mm-hmm. Or it's also just you run into someone who's you just run into someone who gets the hot who just happens to be on one board. That was actually, and it was funny because it was someone who was actually, although we had never met each other, it was someone else who worked there for the same company I work for, and he was rolling the first 2 games. He enrolled, and then the 3rd game he got an unexpected challenge, and he was done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes, and
Yeah.
So I noticed that you're starting a lot of the categories at the $600 and $1,200 levels. Now I know a certain player, a couple of Tournament of Champions winners ago, a couple of Tournament of Champions, winners ago, Ben Ingram also was a big proponent of 6 and 12. Did you get that from him, or did you get that independently?
No, I kind of did that independently. I think the 2 and 4, the 2 highest rows on the board are particularly risky because you risk giving control of the board to your opponents a little bit more. I think the 600 level is a good mix of, it's a sufficiently difficult question. You have a pretty good shot of getting a daily double, but you're also likely to know it if it is a daily double. So I actually will go look up what he said about that because I was not familiar with that before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ben Ingram often would he would start at 600 and 1200 as a rule, and go 6, 8, 10, and then as his category entry. I'm thinking much the same reason for daily doubles, and it certainly worked out for him, and it's been working out for you as well. A couple of times I've noticed you were, you've been hopping around the board. How much of that was kind of Watson inspired then?
So a lot of my studying was done just based on switching between categories pretty much at random. So I figured since I was practicing that way, I'd have kind of an edge over my opponents. A lot of them had been practicing by watching games where people tend to go down the board. Um, I I want to say it wasn't super Watson inspired, but I think it's something that kind of suits my temperament and suits my kind of yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I was just gonna say, at least about starting at the middle of the board. I did in one of my games. I was playing someone who was hopping around the board, and in Double Jeopardy, I found a daily double under an $800 clue. And it was also, it was a situation where actually he bet all of his money and missed the daily double, and then continued to hop around the board. And it was like, well, it seemed like he wanted to find the daily double. And I was just thinking, like, it's not really going to mean much if you don't have any money to wager on the daily double. So if you want to go do that, okay. And then very shortly thereafter, I found the other daily double under the $800 clue. I would love to see, because I definitely, I'll admit to having a dream about getting invited back to a major tournament and playing some very named players who might be known for that sort of thing, and then sneaking out a game by finding a daily double under an $800 clue, much to their chagrin. So yeah, as I said, I was definitely flow. I tried to do a little bit different for the Tournament of Champions. But yeah, no, it's I was just like, I want to get into the flow of a category. If I realized that there was still a daily double and there were very few clues left, or if I felt like I wanted to get the big clues out of the way, I'd get to the bottom toward the end. But that was about it. In the game that I lost, I was wishfully thinking that the $800 clue in a geography category that was left up was going to be where the daily double was. Unfortunately, it wasn't.
So, in your interview on Friday's show, you spoke to Alex about how Watson kind of got you into Jeopardy when you were at MIT, Pranjal.
Yeah.
Is that so? So I guess was there anything else that you wanted to say about kind of that? Like, did you find the T-shirt you mentioned?
Oh, I didn't, but I'm at my parents' house now, so maybe I should take a look at look for that. Maybe it's in a closet somewhere. So that'd be a nice thing to have, the TOC or whatever. But yeah, I hadn't really watched a lot of Jeopardy before that. I had a teacher in high school who was on it, and then after that, one of my friends was on it, and then I decided maybe I should give this a shot. So I kind of just took the test on a whim, and then they emailed me, telling me to come to Boston. So I'm in, University of Illinois right now, and there's no Jeopardy auditions near there. So they told me, you can fly out to Boston for the audition. And I was out of town, out of the country that week. So then, 3 months later, they emailed me again. There's an audition in San Francisco. So I took some very long series of flights to get to San Francisco. And so this was March 23rd, and 2 days later, I get a call, and they're like, "So I see you took the test about a year ago," and I said, "No, I took the test about 2 days ago, or the audition about 2 days ago." And she just says, "Wow, I didn't realize we called people that quickly." But anyways, it was immediately after the audition that they called me and told me I was gonna be on the show, so I had to kind of get it in gear pretty quickly.
Yeah, I that's almost a record.
I was gonna say I haven't heard anyone. I could think of one person who might have had a month, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think they were looking for a few more contestants to close out the season, so I suspect I'm not the only one from that group, but.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's so. Once you got the call, how much notice did you end up having before you taped?
I had about a month. I think I got the call on somewhere around the end of August, or around the end of April, and I taped,
Yes.
or around the end of March, and I taped around the end of April. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I had a paper
Okay.
deadline
Yeah.
about a week after they called me, so I couldn't really think about it. I was like, I'm going to finish this paper, then I'll think about
So, when you were in LA, if I remember hearing correctly from last week's panel, your this past week taped on a Tuesday, and the next set of episodes taped on Thursday. Is that correct?
Yep.
So you had a little bit of time in Culver City, Los Angeles. How did you spend your off day, as it were?
Yeah, so I slept in. I had driven up from Phoenix with my parents, so we all went to because they wanted to watch. So we went up to the Getty Museum, which is really fantastic. Beautiful architecture, and it's free, which is nice.
Jason, do you remember what you did when you were in LA for taping?
I was just about to say that him saying that the Getty Museum was free is probably going to generate a comment from Vending Room. It's free in the United States. But I actually, so I had back-to-back tapings. So I had actually, because I have friends in the LA area, actually friends from childhood in the LA area, I got into Culver City early. I ran around with them for a day, and also it was actually the first time I was meeting my friend Jason, his now wife. This was the first time that I got to meet. She was then just his girlfriend. I also actually, I mean, it's not glamorous. I went to actually the headquarters for the company that I work for, because they're based out of Santa Monica. And then actually, so I had I then also had I had to go back, and so on Tuesday, I taped again on Tuesday. And then I actually, one of my friends had gotten tickets to the Kevin Nealon show at the Laugh Factory, so we went to see that. I also popped in on the LA Scrabble. I believe I popped in on the LA Scrabble Club because when in LA and there's Scrabble. But so I kept myself busy. I didn't do anything super touristy. Actually, after my tapings were all done, I had one extra day because we were thinking, if I have to be there for both tape days. But so I just kind of walked on the Santa Monica Pier. Went to In-N-Out Burger. As well.
Okay. So my next question for you, Pranjal. Obviously, when you got to I should say, when you got to the lunch break in between the Wednesday and the Thursday episodes, obviously it meant you got to have lunch at the Sony commissary. And one question I always like to ask is, what did you have for lunch?
I think I had some stir fry of some sort. I definitely remember I wanted brown rice and I wanted vegetables and kind of a balanced meal. And I also remember I saved the leftovers.
But that's also a first just because. Or then again, I guess I didn't ever have much left over.
Yeah. Well, I was just, the adrenaline was pumping, so I wasn't super hungry. But I figured maybe I'd be hungry later in the snacks in the break room.
Also, I didn't, my first tape day, I didn't get on until the last episode. So also, I was just kind of sitting, relaxed, kind of seeing what was going on, thinking all the while I'm gonna get through this whole tape day, and they're not gonna call me, and I'm gonna have to come back tomorrow.
I mean, that happened to me, and that was, I certainly got an extra day of practice and an extra day of kind of getting comfortable with the set, so that was nice.
And Gord Reid has joined us. Thank you for coming on to Jeopardy Live panel. And how are you doing?
I'm good. Sorry I'm late.
That's
Can you hear
okay.
me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine. No problem. And so you were a carryover contestant then, Pranjal?
Yeah. So I was there Monday, and I just watched.
You watched 6 episodes, and then you got the call. So I guess you saw the entirety of Ellen's run. Were you when you got called to face her? Were you did you feel confident or?
I mean, I felt like I kind of understood her play style at that point, um, and I felt like I had a shot. Like certainly she's a great player, and I don't think I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna ace in the hole, but I did think I had a shot.
Now that I guess that Beelzebub question, pretty much right out of the gate. I think the fifth clue of the game. I I heard someone on Twitter mention that there was a long stoppage at that point.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of stoppage when they had to kind of play the clue, I guess, in slow motion to figure out whether I said Beelzebub or Beelzebub, and I said Beelzebub. And I told them I said I told them I said it wrong, but they still did their kind of due diligence. So.
And then I guess because Alex said something, the other contestants couldn't rebound.
Yeah, that's right. He said I said Beelzebub, and he said yes, Beelzebub. So that kind of gave it away.
Okay, well, at this point, I think I'm going to change gears a little bit on the discussion now that Gord is here. But I guess the chief topic of discussion for the general roundtable tonight's sports categories, and also the sports shaming that all the lovely sports writers tend to inflict upon Jeopardy contestants after the sports categories air. So I guess my first question is, how do we feel in general about sports categories? I know I enjoy them. What about you guys? I'm just loading up the poll I did recently on the Jeopardy fan to get the exact numbers of how the readers feel, but how do you guys feel in general about sports categories?
Like, very much. Well, personally, also it's because I followed. I mean, the when I was younger, the first section of the newspaper that I reached for is the sports. So personally, I really my second game there was a college football bowl category in the Jeopardy round, and I went there first, and I ran it and kind of set the pace. I definitely got some help from sports categories during my run. Won a game because of the finals every year in the NFL. Honestly, I know that people tend to say things like, "Oh, it's kind of biased to have sports," but I've seen that with so many things. I mean, there was someone who I knew who was on the show who was talking about how he thought it was a shame that he had 2 literature finals, and when I was looking at the clues, I'm like, neither of these is particularly literary. And also, like, you could really do that about any, you could say, oh, you know what, it's not fair to have a literature category against a novelist, or it's not fair to have a math category against a math teacher, or various things of that nature. And I just think that to say that sports should not be a part of this, especially when pop culture tends to, other aspects of pop culture tend to loom quite a bit in certain games, I think that, you've gotta include, give what's their fair share. And personally, I mean, I would like to see a little bit more, rigorous academic content. But still, like, yeah, if you're gonna have other pop culture type categories, then yeah, sports should come up.
I was disappointed. In my one game, I did not have any sports categories. I had, I think, 1 or 2 assorted questions mixed in as general knowledge, but I was a little bit disappointed because I felt that would have been a strong point. And I don't think my fellow competitors would have been as strong in any kind of sporting category. So definitely yes to sports categories. I was talking with a fellow Jeopardy alum just a few days ago, Lincoln Hamilton, and we were discussing sports categories and sports Jeopardy in general. And we'd like to see more sports Jeopardy type questions in Jeopardy period, and more Jeopardy level questions in sports Jeopardy, if that makes any sense.
What are your feelings on sports categories, Pranjal?
They're certainly a big weakness for me, but I think it's certainly fine to have them. I think everyone has weaknesses and strengths, and I think the people who have sports as a weakness maybe tend to be particularly outspoken about that. But I think it's perfectly. Yeah. It would be weird not to have sports categories in a trivia competition.
Now, I guess I was kind of expecting those sorts of remarks to the first part, but the second part, especially with regards to, it seems like every time there's a sports category, some sports writer somewhere has, comes out with, oh, I'm going to get 5,000 clicks on this article by making fun of Jeopardy contestants, who don't know about Tim Lincecum, or in poor Terry McElhennon's case, getting Auburn and Alabama mixed up. Mm-hmm. So, how do we feel about that sort of thing? What's the best way of reacting to those sorts of articles? Because, yes, it's publicity for the show, but do we need to be, on the other hand, it feels like, we're shaming contestants,
Well, I think one of the nice things about Jeopardy is, both as a kind of contestant and as a viewer, is that you can say, well, hey, here's all these smart people who know all these things, but hey, I know this thing that they don't know. And I think that's, a key part of the experience for the viewer of any game show. And I think, if that's what the sports writers want to write about, I think we all feel that way, oh, they totally should have known that. I certainly think that sometimes when I'm watching Jeopardy, but
I just
think it's. Oh, go ahead.
One thing that I would just say about that though is that so to some extent, Tim Lincecum actually, I was just thinking about the sports clues that came up during the episodes that I taped in around then, and other than there was one clue about Akeem Olajuwon, but other than that, everything was pretty it was pretty generally available, that you didn't need to really know all that much about sports, that even if you just had sort of a passing idea, you knew of the people or the entities who were asked. And so in that sense, if someone, kind of like if in White Men Can't Jump, where Rosie Perez gives that answer of Babe Ruth to, I believe it was a Wilt Chamberlain clue, there's something like that, okay, but some other stuff, it's for some people that's just not what they're interested in, not what they're thinking about, thinking about preparing for when they get on the show. Personally, I would like to see more articles like, how did this group of Jeopardy contestants not know this thing about Shakespeare, or something more along that line. I think that would, if I saw more of those, I think I'd be a little bit more sort of tolerant of the whole, oh, look at what this Jeopardy contestant didn't know. Or I guess in my case, I think it would have been really cool if they were like, hey, look, a Jeopardy champ actually knows his sports, but
they don't say anything when the category gets run, but heaven forbid you miss one.
It's sort of a lose-lose scenario, because when you deal with these online sports columnists, the nature of their business is to be judgmental and elitist. So if you have simple questions like, in what stadium do the Los Angeles Dodgers play? Or, well, exactly. If it's that simple, if you softball it, they're going to make fun of us for that. Or if it's more complex and somebody misses, especially Auburn Alabama rivalry miss, God forbid,
Well,
then they're going to jump all over it.
One thing about that is that I can imagine that there were, that there was a large portion of the Jeopardy watching audience in the state of Alabama who would get very angry at that sort of mistake.
So
Yes.
over under 12 people. I had to.
I actually invited Terry to come on to tonight's panel, and he was unfortunately unavailable. But it would have been nice to. It would have been nice to have heard his take on that for sure. But
I'm sure that also. I mean, I can't imagine in this day and age, like if there were some. Like if there were some things that kind of got his way personally, which I've been hearing creepy things from some other contestants about, and yeah, I just like something like that. It's just I mean, it happens, and it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, yes, I said that for people who are part of that rivalry, it is probably more of a it is probably more of a sore point than it ought to be. But
So I'm just waiting for next month because in late August I hit my 12-month for my tape date. That's when Maggie says I can try to get into the pool for Sports Jeopardy. So, fingers are crossed.
I actually probably should look at this. At one point over the summer hiatus, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go back and rewatch all the Sports Jeopardies. But because there were a few in season 1 I haven't seen and stuff like that, and get better stats. But I'd be curious to know if there's anyone who has won on both yet. On both Real Jeopardy and Sports Jeopardy, or regular Jeopardy and Sports Jeopardy.
I know that I was going to audition for the first season, but I had a conflict, and my thing was going to be that, well, look, I can, the general knock on Jeopardy contestants is that they know nothing about sports. Well, here I am holding my own.
Fair enough.
I don't know if anybody has won on both. I know there have been people who've appeared on both.
There are definitely a few people who've been on both, but I'm not sure if there's anyone who's won on both. But that's one thing I will at least look into over the. And I'm sure Mark Barrett will send me an email or something if I've missed someone. So he usually tends to in that sort of a situation. What's it like watching Jeopardy now that you've actually taped, Pranjal?
I liked watching Jeopardy more before I taped. I really did. Before there's some amount of like yelling at the TV now. You should have known that, but. I still watch, not every day, but from time to time I catch the recaps and such.
Have you started any sort of Tournament of Champions preparations yet? I'd say 4 wins and 89,000 at this point. I'd say it's probably probably a good bet to start making preparations if you haven't already. But have you started?
I've done a little bit. I haven't really been doing kind of the rigorous study I was doing before my appearance, just because I've been so busy with work and such.
So you were introduced.
That is Matt Jackson.
Sorry?
Oh no, because Matt was on last year's TOC, wasn't he?
Yeah, Matt was on last year's TOC. So
he was right at the cutoff.
Yeah.
I guess slay the demon that is Buzzy.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely watched his shows. I've been reviewing the tapes. So yeah, it's good. It's going to be great to go and meet all these guys I've seen on TV.
So you were introduced as originally from Shaker Heights, Ohio. You're at the you mentioned you're at the University of Illinois now, and obviously you feel you have major connections back in Cleveland. That
Yeah.
you went for Shaker Heights as opposed to Illinois. Is that where is that
Yeah,
in Illinois?
The University of Illinois. It's about 2 hours south of Chicago,
Okay.
depending on how fast you drive. And Shaker Heights is, of course, right by Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. So are there any questions at this point in between any of the members of our panel?
I just pulled it up real quick. Based on the Jeopardy.com TOC tracker, that you are seated 5th right now.
Okay. Not bad.
So, very good odds. Good luck.
Yeah. I think they may be missing a couple of names, but at this point, but he's, I'd say he's got a very good shot. And of course, that's saying nothing about anything that might happen in future episodes too. So.
That's right.
So, I'd like to thank you guys for coming on to tonight's round table. It was a lot of fun talking about Jeopardy with you guys.
Again, sorry I'm late. I had my world tour to San Antonio, so.
Oh.
But I want to make sure I jumped on to join you and say hi to Andy again.
And both of you, thank you for Jason and Pranjal. Thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Also, in terms of Jeopardy live panel housekeeping, this audio isn't going to be appearing once the podcast comes out, but at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight, I'm going to be taping an episode or a one-on-one audio only, but using Google Hangouts Live to YouTube with Jennifer Morrow. The topic is Jennifer Morrow 1 year later, where we'll talk about how Jeopardy and social media has changed over the past 12 months, and that should be a very interesting discussion. She was a lot of people loved her, a lot of people didn't like her very much, but we'll talk about how social media and Jeopardy has changed over the past 12 months with her at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. If you have any comments for that, by all means, leave those on the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. I'll also be interviewing Jason George via Skype at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So if you have any questions you'd like me to ask of him, also leave those on the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. So for all of everyone here at the JeopardyFan.com and Jeopardy Live panel, I'm Andy Saunders. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for taking part, leaving your messages. And I'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks.